Welcome back to Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice. I'm Julie Grant. We have a couple very compelling stories for crime time for you tonight. But first, I want to introduce and welcome our guests. Joining us tonight, retired Deputy Inspector of the New York Police Department, Corey Pegues. Corey was in law enforcement for 26 years. He spent 14 years as a combat medic for the U.S. Army and the New York National Guard, and he's also an author of the book Once a Cop. His life story is being featured in A Cops and Robbers Story, a documentary premiering at the Doc New York Festival on Wednesday. And also joining us tonight, retired Assistant Chief Jailer and former Chief of the Major Crime Section, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III. Adam served as a police officer for 30 years, overseeing homicide cases, robberies, special victims units, and a gun assault team. And he is the former Assistant Police Academy Director. So I want to say welcome to you both. And our first story tonight comes from Nevada and the Henderson Police Department, where a police chase turns into a shootout.
I was walking home and somebody fired his gun. And told me
you were walking home and someone pulled their gun?
Yes, and told me to get in his car.
How long ago was this?
On Lake Mead, a couple minutes. He got to the Circle K across the street from the Lake Mead.
Okay.
And told me to go get gas. And the car was unlocked, so I ran. And I ran into the Walgreens.
Upon arriving in the area, officers began searching for the suspect and his vehicle. A short time later, officers located the vehicle traveling west on Lake Mead Boulevard toward Boulder Highway.
We're going to be making a U-turn going back.
During the pursuit, an officer reported seeing a handgun in Flores's hand.
Northbound again. And
Copy 413 in
the subject just lost his tire. Subject
lost his tire.
The pursuit continued approximately 3 miles north on Boulder Highway until Flores, who had blown both driver's side tires, lost control of his vehicle and crashed into another vehicle at the intersection of Galleria Drive and Boulder Highway. Ultimately, Flores fell to the ground as several other officers arrived. Officers requested medical and quickly began life-saving measures. Flores was subsequently transported to a local hospital where he is expected to survive.
The question we're posing tonight, was this proper use of force? Now to my law enforcement experts tonight. Corey Pegues, I'll start with you first, please.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. So I'm an advocate, a big advocate for isolate, contain, use as much time as you possibly can to apprehend the individual. So when you look at this video, his tires were blown. There was a firearm that was seen, and I believe that the officer that discharged his weapon was the one that observed him with the firearm. So he never really lost sight of him at all. And as he entered got to the intersection, he discharged his firearm, knowing that this guy just committed a felony. He just kidnapped somebody. Later on, information that was given to him, he tried to rob another person. So this was a violent person running in the streets of Nevada. I believe it was a justified shooting.
All right, thank you for that. Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee, what do you think about this?
I tend to agree. It basically meets the criteria for Tennessee v. Garner, Graham v. Conner, two well-known Supreme Court cases. Criteria being that the severity of the crime, the safety of the officer or others, and was he actively resisting arrest. And all three of those situations apply there. The only concern that I would really have there would be those rounds that were being fired by the officer. I lost count, but I would be very concerned of where they are, what was beyond that fleeing suspect, and was there a danger to the community that may have been behind where the officer was shooting.
Excellent points. Thank you. So our next story comes from Tulsa, our affiliate there, KJRH. The story is about hope for missing Native Americans or murder victims. Let's watch.
This dirt road is the last place Aubrey Dameron was seen.
It's never just been one emotion through this.
An emotional roller coaster for her aunt, Pam Smith.
You know, you get so many emotions going. You know, at times you have hope, and then you lose hope, and then you have fear, you know, anger, sadness. Just, it's a roller coaster.
Pam still searches this creek next to the house where Aubrey was living at the time. Delaware County investigators have had few leads in the case.
He left home during the early morning hours. Didn't say where he was going. Left without his cell phone or without a purse.
Pam believes Aubrey was met with foul play.
The first thing that popped in my head, it was this is a hate crime. If something happened to her, it's a hate crime, you know, because she's transgender, she's Native American.
Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskins says he feels Pam's pain.
Women, and frankly, young people, are missing. We don't know where they are, and sometimes it seems hopeless.
Missing and murdered Indigenous women now considered a crisis. Sean Partridge's sister was killed several years ago.
We know that the high rate of violence being perpetrated against Indigenous people, women especially, can put our people at greater risk for going missing or being murdered.
Currently, there are 65 unsolved cases of murdered or missing Native Americans in Oklahoma. Pam Smith is just one of those families hoping this initiative will finally bring justice.
Our Indigenous people go missing almost daily, you know. So it gives me hope that the more light shed on it, that more people are going to take this serious and understand that, you know, this is a crisis that we're dealing with.
So Pam can honor Aubrey's memory.
I think, you know, once we find her and justice is served, I plan on continue to advocate.
The question we're posing on this one, what are some of the challenges in solving these crimes? Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee, I want to go to you first on this one, please.
It can be very, very difficult when you're dealing with a situation where you have a disenfranchised victim. In this case, you have someone from Native American community that was murdered and also transgender. So it all depends on how much do the law enforcement agencies in those communities care about these people. How much do the communities care about them, the local government? If there's not a push from someone in power to investigate these types of crimes, then you're going to have a problem solving them.
Corey Pegues, give us your thoughts on the same question, please.
Yeah, so sometimes it's difficult developing relationships in those type of communities because there's a lot of distrust with the police. But it seems to me if they're having a pattern of missing murdered people, I think it needs to be stepped up to probably a federal investigation if it's something that's really, really out of control and people are just missing and ended up murdered. So we need to probably step it up because it's difficult trying to deal with people that really don't want to engage. And like the colonel said, the only way to solve any crime in America, the first way to do it is by developing a relationship with the police and the community. So once you do that, then you'll be able to get inroads in that community to try to solve some of these crimes.
Great points by you both and lots to think about there. And Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee and Corey Pegues are going to stay right there. We want you to stay put as well. We have to step aside for a break. When we come back, we've got more crime time stories for you up next. Plus, we also have this.
The jury's still out in the pizza delivery murder trial as deliberations drag into another day. Did the evidence leave enough reasonable doubt for an acquittal? And on the docket, we take a look at what's next in the Georgia jogger shooting case. Plus, the 13th juror speaks. Go to our Facebook page and tell us what you think.
You got kids 14 years old, 12 years old getting caught up with guns. I'm so tired of seeing our young folks going to the penitentiary and going to the graveyard. You know, it's a 911 call right now.
Our next crime time story comes from our Scripps affiliate WCPO in Cincinnati, Ohio, where a community is fighting back against gun violence.
Anti-gun violence advocates say while those arrests may make our streets safer, it is disheartening that so many people have wound up taking that path. They are here in the Avondale neighborhood trying to make sure that more young people don't wind up in their shoes.
As you know, we out here working right now. You know, possibly tonight we could save somebody's child from getting shot and killed.
It's a familiar route for Mitch Morris and other anti-violence advocates, the tough road toward a safer Cincinnati.
You just don't want to see anybody get in trouble with these guns.
20 people were charged federally in another wave of cases aimed at tackling local gun violence, the second wave in recent months. 6 were recently arrested and 13 were already in state custody. Almost all were charged with illegally possessing a firearm as a convicted felon.
We just out here trying to stand and fight and touch somebody and try to show them something different.
Morris has done this type of work for 30 years.
You got kids 14 years old, 12 years old getting caught up with guns. You know, that's a mercy.
He says this news is devastating because of what gun violence does to the community and the lifelong impact of these serious charges, which could result in up to 10 years in federal prison.
I'm so tired of seeing our young folks going to the penitentiary and going to the graveyard. You know, it's a 911 call right now.
A call this team plans to answer for years to come.
We just out here trying to stand and fight and touch somebody.
Federal agents are still looking for one suspect. If you have any information, you're asked to call the ATF tip line.
So do stiff penalties help with crime prevention? My experts are still with me tonight. Corey Pegues, I want to go to you for an answer on this one first, please.
Well, listen, like the gentleman said, this is a 911 call because there's pockets around America in low socioeconomic neighborhoods where this stuff is happening. And sometimes they give what we call football numbers, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in prison, but the cycle still continues. So America has to do something better. We have to really have some stringent gun laws, all right, and get these guns out of the streets of these inner cities. Most of the inner cities, they're not making guns. They come in, the 95 pipeline down to the southern part of the country. They need to do something and still protect people's rights to have firearms, but America needs to do something a lot better because it really hurts my heart to see these kids going in and out of jail. And jail's supposed to rehabilitate people, so you put them in jail for 10 years, and they actually become murderers, hardcore gangsters, hustlers, and everything because there's no rehabilitation in prison. So does the hard time help? In my experience as a cop and as a black man living in low socioeconomic neighborhoods, I don't think the prison system is working. The criminal justice system needs to be reformed.
Really interesting thoughts there, Corey. Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee, want to go to you next on that question, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with Corey right there, Julie. I believe in the old adage, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's what these men are doing. They are trying to prevent these young men from committing gun crimes. That's the only way we really can solve this situation because obviously the amount of time doesn't work. We still have young men going to prison, as Corey said, in these huge sentences, 15, 20, 30 years, whatnot. And it's not doing any good. The jails are filling up. And so we have to find a way to steer them in another direction.
Really interesting thoughts. And I want to pick your brains a little more on this because I think something really fascinating that you both hit on was how, and Corey, you mentioned it first. So I'm going to go to you for a little more of an explanation on this. How you mentioned, let's just say someone gets a gun charge, possession of a weapon, and they wind up in prison for years and years. And you were saying that prison experience can turn them into a killer when they're then released. Would you share a little more information with us on how that happens, please?
So what happens is like the biggest gangs are not on the streets, the biggest gangs are in prisons. So when you get into prison, especially when not the local prison, I'm talking about when you're going to do the major time, you're going in there with hardened criminals. So you, for example, you send a 14 or 15, 16-year-old, you send them upstate New York or wherever to a hardened prison. He's in prison with grown men, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Some people in there 60 years old, they've been in for 40 years. They're not there trying to tell him to get his life together, get straight. They're selling drugs in prisons. They're selling drugs. They're doing drugs, and they're teaching them when you get out. This is how you do. This is how you do crimes. This is how you set up a gang. They're teaching them how to be hardened criminals. So it could be an innocent kid that goes in there because he made a mistake. He got a gun off the street. Somebody gave him a gun. He got caught with the gun. But now once he goes in prison, you turn him into a wolf and an animal.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Really, I wish we had more time to talk about this. Lieutenant Colonel, anything you want to add to what Corey just said?
He's absolutely right. You know, I currently work in a facility, a pretrial facility, and I see the same thing. It's getting to the point now where you can tell when someone from the prison has come to the jail level because they teach them some of the ways of committing crimes on the jail level, and these young men get out and they just get a little bit better at committing the crimes from learning from some of the older guys that have been in prison for years.
Boy, that's really something. I could talk to you gentlemen all evening, but unfortunately, I'm not allowed. We have to go to a commercial break, but we want to invite you both back on the show to talk some more really great insight and expertise you shared with us. Corey Pegues and Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.